Okay, Assalamualaikum and welcome to Malaysian Industrial Hygiene Association International Conference 2022 here in Kuala Lumpur. I'm here to present to you my topic on the customer and problem synergy for a sustainable industrial hygiene solution. So, first of all, before I go straight to the topic, I would like to introduce myself. So, my name is Ahmad Khairi Abdullah. I'm the leading industrial hygienist in oil refinery in Melaka, Malaysia. I am 38 years old, married with 2 children. I've been working as an industrial hygienist for 15 years, and I have experience implementing industrial hygiene at site, setting and even setting standard at the corporate level. My most notable project that I involved is on developing a standard platform for fatigue management at corporate level and developing a standard for noise control at the Petronas group level. So that's enough about me. So my topic here today is about innovation in essence. So what is innovation all about? So in a definition from the internet, it basically stated that innovating or innovate is making changes in something established by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. So or in simple layman term, to introduce or something new, especially product. So this that basically does not capture what innovation all about. So I would prefer another definition, basically quoted from digi10.com. It stated that innovation is a process of creating values by applying a novel solution to a meaningful problem. So, and then it further define why we use this term innovation. So innovation, the reason we believe it has utilities in the three explicit steps that we need to do. First of all, is it novel? Does it solve a meaningful problem? Does it create values? Of course, for industrial hygiene, we do create values and we did solve a meaningful problem. So, however, we always have our issues to resolve hazard at site. So how do we go about this, and how do we solve issues that we face as industrial hygienists? So why do we need to innovate as an industrial hygienist? So there's a lot of reason for this. Of course, innovation basically we keeping embrace to the current technology and making sure that we deliver better value. But I would like to start with a scenario, and I guess every one of us must have faced this scenario. So have you ever experienced this? So you you conduct a workplace assessment. You are called in as an expert, as an industrial hygiene professional. You did an assessment at site. So basically, doing what industrial hygiene do best, we basically recognize, identify, evaluate what is the hazard all about, what what type of personnel that exposed to the hazard, or in our term we usually use assessment unit. We use similar exposure group to basically to identify this hazard that we identify, either chemical, noise, what kind of group that are most exposed to this hazard. And whenever we know they are exposed, we need to determine as well whether the exposure is significant. And when we know the exposure is significant, what type of control available, and what type of control that we need to propose further. And sometimes the solution, the recommendation that we make is a tough one and need a lot of investment. And in our case, sometimes we didn't just stop at making a tough recommendation. We also help and get buy-in from the management. Personally get a buy-in from the management to make sure that the exposure is reduced significantly. Even though it is hard, even though it's uh, we need to basically do a lot of sitting and even sometimes get the budget yourself. And we even conduct the hazard communication to all the reversible. That's a lot. Sometimes we took more than we need to do the communication. There's a lot of session we do, not just on the assessment itself, even to the awareness level, to tell the people this is the hazard that they're exposed to, this is the control they're supposed to do, and whatnot. And then why it is important for them to follow this recommendation. At the end of the day, finally, when we complete, we are happy because we did our job. We make sure that the hazard was identified, the control is implemented, no matter how expensive or how difficult, and we give a pat to our back, saying that we did a good job. And of course, some of us return back to our office, return back to our home with a good feeling. However, a few years down the road, when we get back to the site, disaster. Most of our solution or recommendation is abandoned. So, of course, we thought we did a good job, but end of the day, no one is protected, or a few people is protected, and they go back to the old ways of doing things. So of course, this is frustrating. This basically to me, this is frustrating. There's a lot of assessment what we did. There's a lot of recommendation, follow through that we did. That after a while, the solution was not basically considered, basically not followed through, and it was totally abandoned. And of course, this is to me personally very frustrating. But there should be a better way that we can do this better. So if everyone agree with me, or some of you agree, so and if your answer is yes, how do we proceed from here? How do we do better? The first thing that we need to know, that we need to really ask ourselves, do we really understand this the assessment unit or the similar exposure group, or the user in this sense, the customer in this sense, and their problem? Do our solution really address the issues, really help them to make sure not only that they are protected and do the not only protect them, but help them to do their job better? So in this sense, we need to sometimes role model to other people. So we need to ask ourselves as well, who is the one who's really good in understanding the problem and similar exposure group? Basically customer, user. So who are the person that we need to refer to make sure that in the future, whenever we did our industrial hygiene assessment, the workplace assessment, we can make sure that the solution stick. So is it an engineer? Is it the designer? The UX the IUX guy that basically design system, social media solutions, entrepreneur, or innovators. And these two people down below, entrepreneur and innovators, are usually the one that face this issue, especially when you refer to startup. You refer to company that trying to make a solution that far ahead of its time, but however, they need to be profitable. They need to understand whether that solution that they are proposing is a problem that should be addressed, and is there a market for it? So this is the one that I make reference to, and for me, this is the person that we need to basically look up to and see what kind of method that they did that basically we as industrial hygiene can replicate. So if so, basically we need to understand their methods. What are the methods they use that are so successful? That are able to basically execute this out of reach technology that basically in just a few years before it was implemented, before the technology introduced, I don't think anyone will say it is possible, but they make it possible. So how do we as industrial hygiene replicate that? So what kind of method that they use? So I guess one of the method they are using is working backward. Basically understanding the problem itself, understanding the customer itself before we provide the solution and before we determine whether that's a business need of it. Basically, for working backward, we need to basically understand the customer, understand the customer perspective of it. Whether is the problem something that customer really have issues with? Is it something that they are pain whenever we address it, it can relieve their pain. It is not just something that basically support them, but it basically relieve their pain and make sure that their tasks are easier and we can protect them as well. So basically, we need to understand the customer, understand the problem, and then we need to basically determine the solution, validate with them whether that solution that we provide is really something that can address their problem, can address their pain point. And then finally, we talk about the business side of it. First of all, the customer. We need to determine basically to have a validated customer and problem. We need to determine what is their persona, what is the hypothesis behind the issues. We need to understand what is their customer statement. We need to understand what is their problem statement. So how do we do this? Based on the method, first of all, we need to develop a persona and a hypothesis on what is their issues so that we can basically understand and provide the right solution. So we need to, first of all, we need to understand what is the fact about the target customer. We need to understand how they behave in addressing that issues. And we need to understand what are their pain they are trying to resolve and what is their goals. If we, to get that customer and problem segment, first of all, we need to understand the fact and behavior for the customer, the pain and goal of the problem, so that we can basically develop their persona, develop the hypothesis, and basically determine what kind of problem or goals or pain that whenever we address, the customer will react and delighted to basically uh, be relieved of. Okay. Next, once we determine the customer goals, customer fact, we need to basically map out the impact for each of these goals, pain, the facts and behavior, and whether when we address it, when we how confident are we that this is a issue that need to be addressed? Basically, we need to validate our riskiest prediction. Whether or not we need to basically determine, do they have issues with this? Basically, what we need to do, we need, whenever, after we have our hypothesis, we need to validate. Basically, we need to talk with the customer, talk to the similar exposure group, talk to the SCG, ask them, do they have these issues or not? If we address this, will it contribute to relieving their pain? Will it contribute to achieving their goals? And that sometimes their goals are not functional goals. It can be social goals. It can be even an emotional goals that basically we need to understand. That's why we need to talk to them and validate our hypothesis from using this method. Basically, we need to ensure before we provide the solution, what is the riskiest prediction that if we does validate is basically if it is unvalidated, the solution will not address the issues. We need to determine that first. Once we complete that, then we can come to the solution. And during this solutioning part, we need to have a the end of the goal. The goal of the solution is basically to get a valuation of the solution with customer, to ensure they are delighted with the solution, so that they will use the solution frequently, and to ensure the solution is sustainable. So how do we go about this? First of all, we need to map the problem. We need to understand based on their goals, based on the pain, based on the fact, based on the behavior that we have from the persona earlier. We need to map out their problem and to really understand the problem. Once we did that using this method, then we need to map out their journey. For example, for this case, we are mapping about how do the customer or we ourselves make a sandwich. So starting from the bread itself, toasting the bread, and basically taking out the bread, spreading the jams, and eating it. Do we really understand their journey to solve the problem in hand? So once we able to basically complete the problem mapping, the customer journey, and then finally we can determine whether the solution that we are providing is something that basically can solve the issues. So from there, we can determine the solution based on our basically based on our hierarchy of control that we have, whether that solution is something that really fit to their problem. And once we provide the solution, we can basically solve their problem and the group around them. Next, we talk about business. For I guess I'm skipping this because we are more interested on providing solution. The business side of it we can discuss a bit later because there's plenty discussion on this. So great. So we know about the basically working backward. We understand about developing the persona from the fact, from the behavior, from the goals, from pains, and establishing the problem statement, the problem mapping, establishing the user mapping, and then finally determining the solution. So where do IH fit here? So I guess for IH, what we have is the similar exposure group, and we have our hierarchy of control. So similar exposure group is similar to persona. So we already have our similar exposure group. We just need to refine it so that we can understand what is the fact about the SCG, their goals, their pains, and their behavior. And establish that persona, establish that hypothesis, testing that risk prediction, and then going for the solution based on our hierarchy control so that we can understand their issues better. So to me, in our goal in mind is basically to address the similar exposure group exposure to ensure that our control is sustainable. As such, we need to understand our customer or our SCG better and fit our solution to the similar exposure group or our SCG. So I guess what of course innovation is something we need practice on. Even I am practicing right now. So we can start small. Maybe we can start with the next presentation. Maybe before we do any presentation, we should try to get the perspective of the audience or the chairman, at least, before we provide our presentation. Of course, I guess everyone have think this is something common knowledge, but sometimes we are sticking to our template, sticking to our generic template that we present years and years before. But sometimes we need to go back and understand our audience, understand our customer, so that we can deliver better. Or we can basically see what is the current highlight, current issues that repeatedly happen in our workplace. Is there a better solution? Because sometimes we address the surface of it, but we didn't address the cause. So hopefully, this will ensure when we adopt innovation method, basically working backward, this will ensure a sustainable solution and provide a better IH services to our customer, to our stakeholders, and ensure that we did our job in a did our job and provide a solution in a sustainable manner. I guess that's all from me. Thank you. Bye. Assalamualaikum.